YouTube, welcome back for another video. Tonight I thought we would do another problem busting video, and in it I want to tackle something which by those affected can often be perceived as an almost insurmountable issue, and that is, as the title of the video suggests, either really small hands, a short force finger, or just fingers with funny proportions. And oh my god, do I know what you are feeling, because I don't just suffer from one of those, I have all three. Yes, you heard that correctly. Hands, tiny hands, even though I am 5'6" tall, I have, if I compare it to my students, pretty much hands the size of about sort of 8-9-year-old, yeah? Except that theirs are still going to grow. I've long given up hope. Short force finger. Now, if you look at my hand, you can see it comes up really, really short. And for the purposes of this video, I said just for a laugh, I will actually take the measuring tape and it comes up to a whole 2 inches or 5 centimeters, if you prefer metric. I can tell you that in all my years of working, I have yet got to come a colleague who can beat that, as in who has an even shorter force finger. I haven't. Lastly, proportions. You can see my first finger comes up almost to the length of my second, and there's pretty steep drop to the third, and the fourth, yeah, we have spoken about it. There isn't very much of it. So I have had my fair share of frustrations, especially when I was a student, because I think all my teachers I had, they were absolutely fantastic, but they all had the absolute textbook perfect big cello playing hands, and I do think it is incredibly hard if you don't have any of these problems to ever really fully get your head around it. So I've had to find a lot of solutions myself, and these ones I'm hoping to share with you tonight. Now, hands like these, are they ideal for playing the cello? No. Do they mean that you can't become a good cellist? No. So that first up, yeah? We have to come up with our own tricks, our own solutions, but once we have found those, I can tell you there is not really anything you won't be able to do. So let's get stuck in. And before we go into any detail, I'm just going to throw something out there which will be the guiding principle of absolutely everything I'm going to say, and which we're going to tackle, right? And that is, we play with our arms, not with our fingers. Think about that for a second. Say it one more time. We always play with our arms, not just with our fingers. Yeah, I always like to explain it like that. If you think of your arm sort of as an organization, and if you think of a sort of management structure, yeah, the important sort of the boardroom level decisions, they get made very high up here, yeah, where the arm is going, yeah, where it needs to be, positioning, and then as we go lower down, we've got the lower arm which deals with the different positions, and then finally we have got, I sort of describe them as the workers on the shop floor who are just, executing whatever they're being told by higher up. Okay, so that is the basis of everything. So we're not going to start our thinking process here from oh my god, I have got a really short force fingers, or I don't have a very big stretch, I can't get my fingers there, yeah? Your fingers can go wherever they need to go for as long as the arm takes them there, So let's just start. You know, if you just look at normal first position, and I just sort of play a comfortable E on the D string, second finger. Okay, and now without adjusting my arm, I would already feel the strain here a bit, yeah? Because already my third finger doesn't come up quite to where I want it to be. So now I have two choices. I can either just try to make that finger as long as I can, and the same as the fourth finger. Now you can see that that looks desperately uncomfortable. Oh, it is desperately uncomfortable. But not only that, it also compromises intonation. You can hear that that is a little bit sharp, right? And that is what happens when we try to just sort of make the fourth finger as long as we can possibly get it. That is what will happen every single time. So what can we do instead of that? Instead of that extension. So first finger, second finger. Now I already have a little bit of ground to make up to the third finger. But what is a huge step for my finger to make is a very small movement for my arm. If you watched carefully there, you can see that as I go from 2 to 3, you see how my elbow comes forward a tiny little bit. It swings forward a bit. And it swings forward even further for G. And now you can hear that that G is in tune, right? So I'm using my arm sort of as a pivot almost here. So I swing it around a little bit as I need to. Now that becomes much more important when we're on the lower strings. So on the C string here, you can really see, look how my arms comes around to the fourth finger, even more so in fourth position. When you're not used to it, if you've never done this, it will feel kind of like you're almost doing that. It will really feel like whoa. Now, and there is another thing that is very closely connected to that, which we need to watch out for. And as a general, it's a bit of a generalization, but as a rule, certainly in my experience, cellists always have a tendency, especially in the lower positions, to retract the left shoulder a little bit, yeah, to do something like that. Now if your left shoulder is retracted, you are taking your third and fourth finger even further away from the string, you see? So make sure that your starting point is that your shoulders are really square. You want your shoulders to be right above your hips, yeah? If you feel your hip bone here, the shoulder wants to be right on top of that. So then you set yourself up. Already much more favorably in order to really support your fourth finger. Now, speaking of supporting, you can see when I'm on my tiny fourth finger, that my fourth finger, you know, ultimately I've come to the conclusion it doesn't matter how short it is, because my fourth finger is only the last little bit of my arm, right? Look, my entire arm is going into that note. You see? And that brings me onto a fourth finger vibrato. If you feel that your fourth finger fourth finger is a little bit weak. You can actually watch. I've done a whole video on vibrato, which you can look up. It is very, very important that first of all you train all four fingers equally, but for the fourth finger in particular, really train that on its own. Now, most of the time when I'm vibrating on four, I have my third finger down with it. Yeah. And there is an exercise you can do to strengthen that, which is you start in fourth position. I like to do it on a D string. Go down chromatically. Never stop vibrating. Keep vibrating. From fourth position all the way I'm almost forgetting about which finger I'm on. It's my arm that is playing, right? Yeah, and I would hope if you do that exercise, I would hope that very, very soon you find actually, you know, if somebody just listens and they close their eyes, they would never be able to guess, yeah, that the finger that's vibrating here is teeny tiny. So that's really, really, really important. Use your arm and you can compensate for an awful lot in terms of finger lengths. Yeah, so now that is particularly often these sort of short fingers. It often causes a problem in this sort of 5th, 6th, 7th position here. Yeah, so let's say right. So because your fingers are really, 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 really far apart, and there are a couple of things here I try to do. One thing which I find really, really helps, you probably notice that I tend to sort of dip the C string side of the cello down a bit, bring the A string up a bit, yeah? And you do that by sort of getting your knee a little bit, not on the side, but behind the cello. And it brings the A string a little bit higher up. And it actually makes all of these positions a lot more accessible. So that in itself will help. And secondly, don't hold extensions which you don't need to hold. Yeah? Things like you see, my fingers are very much like sort of rubber band. Yeah? I extend to reach a note, let go. Reach, let go. Reach, let go. Don't hold anything which is uncomfortable to hold. Really, the only time I keep the fingers open is if I have to do, you know, fast moving passages. But other than that, especially, you know, if you want to vibrate, don't hold things which you don't need to hold. Yeah. So that is very, 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 very important. Now, I thought we would just talk for a second about the right hand as well, and particularly the short fourth finger business, because that actually affects the right hand quite a bit as well. So, again, if you take a look at my video on bow hold, you will see how exactly I set it up, because that's sort of here the short version, yeah. So you see that is sort of the basic bow hold, and you can see that my fourth finger here, obviously it doesn't come very far down. In fact it just about, I mean, I can just about get it sort of over the top of the stick here, but as soon as I'm going higher up in the bow, you see I can't get it there anymore. Now, what often tends to happen when people have got short fourth fingers is that the finger sort of goes onto the stick and does something like that. It sort of collapses in, which ideal because it makes your whole bow hold quite inflexible, and especially if you really want to connect smoothly, that can cause problems. Instead, what I've sort of come up with is, if you look at a violin bow hold, if you look at violinists, they generally have the fourth finger on top of the stick rather than over it like we do. Yeah, they usually do that. And I've actually found that for myself to be a pretty good alternative. If you can't comfortably get it over, rather than doing that, it's much better still keep it round, because that allows you to retain a level of control. And you see when I try to change bow, I can do that very, very smoothly. Yeah, so those are just some general thoughts. One final thing I would say is has to do actually with selecting the right instrument, and that is certainly something that I have found makes a huge difference. If you have small hands, find it difficult to stretch, make sure that you find an instrument and you get it set up in such a way that your stop lengths, yeah, so the sounding string lengths between the bridge and the saddle up here is as short as it can possibly be. So when you look at my instrument, you can actually see it's not particularly big, which is quite iffy for me because, as I said, I'm quite tall, but ultimately the comfort of the hand has to come first, because you don't want to make your life any more difficult than it needs to be. And this is particularly relevant with student cellos, because especially once you move to a full size, the full size ones tend to be enormous. A lot of the full size student cellos which my students play on, I really struggle with. So if that is a difficulty for you, especially going from 3/4 to full size, consider looking at a 7/8 in between, yeah? Or even 7/8 might be, if you have really small hands, that might be as big as you'll ever go. I mean, mine is just about the full size. So that is a really important aspect to always consider. And the other thing is, when you have the cello set up, you can make some adjustments by either shortening or lengthening the saddle at the top and moving the bridge. There is usually about 1 centimeter sort of room to play with, and that will also affect exactly where your fourth position sits, because there's nothing worse than having a really short fourth finger and a G that's sort of somewhere up here. That will really make it difficult. Yeah, so those are just all things to explore, and as usual, if you have any questions, and I presume this may well become a topic where there might be lots of questions, do pop them into the comment section below, and I will be very happy to answer. And as always, I hope this may have been at least a little bit helpful and gone some way towards solving these problems. And if you liked the video, then smash that like button, subscribe to my channel, and I really look forward to seeing you again soon.